however, since this book's come out, what's been a very strange but beautiful thing has been that I've been invited to come to talk to towns all over, well, many places in the country. Many times they're small towns. They're like Logan, Ohio, 7,000 people. Peoria, Illinois. I was in Scottsburg, Indiana. And I think it's there that towns maybe have a very intense problem. They see it's very, very, a crucial thing to begin addressing. And also they are looking for ways of beginning the conversation, but also of bringing together groups that maybe before had not been working together as closely as they might have, right? And so some of these towns that I mentioned are kind of moving in that direction. And again, there's a lot of things that people might try, and I was talking earlier with some folks that my job, I don't believe, is to lay out a prescription for what you should do. Here's the 5 things, like some kind of internet story, the 5 things you need to do. No, that's not a reporter's job. A reporter's job is simply to say, this looks like where you might go. And that's why I focus a lot on my speech about community, and doing things outside seems to me to be extraordinarily important. Learning from other towns, we now have a widespread acceptance of Narcan that was not the case like 2 years ago, I don't think, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. Needle exchange, these kinds of things are seen as, if not entirely like the best idea, at least they are preventing major catastrophes in public health, that kind of thing. I think that places that are enlisting, I really believe in the fire in the belly of parents who have lost kids, and that's what really we have seen change, I think, in the last couple of years. When I was doing this book, I said, as I remember, I don't remember any obituary honestly reporting cause of death. There probably was 1 or 2, but I just, you just didn't see it. Now you see it a lot. You see it on Facebook, you see these things. And so, and one thing I would finally say, that one of the most radical ideas, I mentioned it a little bit in my talk, is that in Kentucky, they are experimenting with a new kind of jail, and that is a really big idea, I think, to come out of this. Jail up to now has been done one way. It's a parking lot. It's very tense, predatory, boring, a lot of sexual acting out, a lot of crazy stuff going on that you just really, and all of which is pushing people, as soon as they leave jail, to go seek out the dope dealer, right? Very quickly. It's sad because at that very moment, a lot of addicts get into jail. They are detoxing and thinking for themselves for the first time. And so in these a few counties in Kentucky, what they've tried to do is turn a pod, like 6 pods, 1 pod, 70 men. They turn that into a full-time, 24-hour rehabilitation clinic that has a new culture. And one place I would refer you to is Kenton County in Kentucky, which is right across the river from Cincinnati. And not to say that, from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed, you're working on recovery. It's none of this arguing over the History Channel or Discovery Channel and that kind of stuff. No sexual acting out, people have been booted for barter, for stealing, that kind of thing. So, and you have to opt into the pod to do it. But a lot of people want in, believe me. And so it's not to say that is a silver bullet. Again, this is not. Let's get away from that idea. It's a bet that this will be a better use of taxpayer money, jail done that way than the way we've had it done.
Well, no doubt when somebody's trying to get sober, it's usually a crisis that takes them to that point of wanting to get help and wanting to get treatment, and in prison you're captive. We have Mark Richmond here, who is running our substance abuse treatment programs in our prisons, and we have done a lot around reentry and substance abuse treatment in our prisons. And just the other day, Jack actually got a letter from an inmate who was leaving and had talked about how the reentry program that we have in our prisons and the drug and alcohol treatment programs in our prisons really changed his life. And he sent Jack a beautiful letter talking about that transformation. So hopefully we're, going in that direction of doing more and more of that. But I know we've done a lot of progressive things around that. Thank you. I think that's great. So it's a very complicated chemistry to understand. What happens to the brain, Dr. Hedrick, when somebody's taking opiates? Why is it so different than trying to recover from alcohol or other prescription drugs like benzodiazepines? I mean, opiate addiction seems to really do something chemically to the brain that is very different. Can you help the audience understand what happens to the brain chemically when they start opiates, why it takes longer to heal from that than other drugs, and what you see that works most effectively?
Right. Opiates, like all drugs, work at first, somewhat, and they all stop working. And opiates trap you, imprints on your brain harder and deeper in ways that are more permanent than other drugs. And there's just more relapses. It's hard for your brain to unwind that memory and the craving for opiates. And the dangerous thing is when you do get a little sobriety and your tolerance changes and then you relapse, like all drugs. I mean, most people don't do it the first time. There's a series of relapsing, usually a year and a half of starting and stopping to finally get it. But when you do that with an opiate and you relapse, you stop breathing. I mean, it shuts off this little center in your brain that's in charge of telling your lungs to keep breathing. It works while you're asleep. So you can overdose on an opiate and have the best CPR. And you're not going to start breathing until that opiate wears off about an hour or two out of your brain. So the overdoses are more lethal that way. CPR really works good, except if you're on an opiate. You need to be given something that will bump that chemical off your brain so you can start breathing. And a lot of people are probably dying getting good CPR, and it's unfortunate.
So when somebody's recovering and they're trying to stay clean, what are some of the things you can do with vitamins and nutrients and minerals, and what are you noticing in terms of ways people can really restore their brain chemistry? How do you restore the brain chemistry?
Right.
Just time? How long does it take?
Yeah, the first thing I tell my patients once they're kind of clear and can absorb anything, you're starting a 90-day brain healing project. For the next 90 days, you're going to be technically under the influence of your drug. And we can show that with SPECT scans, dark spots. And then these dark spots light up better every month. It usually takes 3 or 4 months to get a brain scan that's the real you. I mean, I'm talking to the drug when I'm meeting people the first few months. And that's why they're still impulsive and they can't trust, you can't trust your own brain for the first 3 months. And that's why AA figured that out like 50 years ago, so 90 meetings in 90 days. Now science is starting to see that it takes about 90 days to get your brain capable.
And AA and NA do offer a community to people who are trying to get clean and sober, which is great. And a sense of community really is important as we're talking about.
Right.
So this next question is for Don Keister. As an educator, as a parent who's lost a child, what do you think parents can do to assist their children in staying away from the behavior that leads to addiction problems?
Well, talk about a community. Parents can get together, they can work together, schools can work together to try to assist. I looked on a website, New Hampshire has 7 ways to protect your child. The reason kids do not smoke or drink is because they don't want to disappoint their parents. And so there's a lot of things, and you have dinner together, you talk together, you do a lot of things. And we did all those things with Tyler. We had a great community, a great family. We had people that would work together to try to work with them, but the stigma then took a hold, and a lot of us did not want to. Several of us did not want, Tyler did not want us to mention his addiction and the problems that he was causing. And one thing that I know with him, and I'm sure with others, they hate themselves when they get in that situation. They know that they are now doing harm to the people who love them the most and help them the most, and yet their brain is in such a situation that they really can't do anything about it. So the community is I love that Sam has talked about, and when he was talking, I thought about our 5K races. It is a rally and a community event when you get 2,000 people there who have loved ones that they know are in recovery. You have people that have died, and they're all there together as a community to support and love each other. And it's been a good experience over the past couple of years.
You guys have done an amazing job bringing, I think, this front and center for people to be able to talk about. And there's a wonderful movie called The Anonymous People. I don't know if some of you have seen that movie or not, but it used to be that, you know, I know in my family, addiction was a source of shame, and you felt like you were the only one in the world that had the issue in your family. Nobody talked about it. I went to a school where I would have thought I was the only one that had the issue in my family, but I come to find out years later, lots and lots of us were going through it at home, but nobody talked about it. And I think that, you know, given that addiction is a disease, substance abuse disorder, as it's sometimes called now, we should be talking about it like we talk about heart disease and cancer and other issues. We're talking more about mental health. And one of the reasons I chose to share my own personal family story was I thought it might help to give other people permission to talk about their stories as well. And I think you're sharing your family stories is doing the same thing. It gives people the power to be open and honest and frank about what's happening in our families. And if we don't talk about it, who will? And I think our sharing our stories can really help other people in what they're going through.